On our Blockbuster Vegas program tonight, risky bets, smoke and mirrors, and political acrobatics. In other words, it's debate night here in Sin City. And we're feeling lucky to be here at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, where in just a few hours, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are going to appear for the third and final time on the debate stage in this election season. Tonight's event moderated by Chris Wallace of Fox News. The Thomas and Mack Center, just behind us here, is where the two candidates will face off. Like everything in this city, the stakes are especially high this evening. Really especially high for Donald Trump, the Republican nominee. Our brand new Bloomberg Politics national poll shows Trump trailing by 9 percentage points. Clinton is at 50%, Trump at 41% amongst likely voters in a two-way race. Now, even Donald Trump's campaign admits he needs a comebacking, page-turning, Hail Marying performance this evening to give himself a chance to win. But after Trump spent the last few days honing his anti-Washington ethics reform message, a central tenet of his rigged election warning, the accusation he's been making about potential voter fraud, was undercut earlier today by Trump's own campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway.
Do you believe there will be widespread voter fraud?
No, I do not believe that. So absent overwhelming evidence that there is, it would not be for me to say that there is. So you do hear reports here and there. But I think Donald Trump's point is a larger one. You don't want me to talk about the other stuff, but he does, there is a larger conspiracy, larger collusion.
This afternoon, Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman, John Podesta, pounced on Conway's statement.
Now he's running around saying it's rigged, even as his own campaign manager threw him under the bus this morning and said that, she didn't think there'd be much voter fraud in this election. And virtually every Republican official has said there wouldn't.
As for tonight, in keeping with his penchant at these debates for psychological warfare, Trump has reportedly invited some special guests this evening to sit in his area of the hall. That includes, reportedly, President Obama's half-brother, the mother of one of the Americans killed in the 2012 attack in Benghazi, Libya. And late today, reports that a former Arkansas TV reporter is going to, for the first time, accuse Bill Clinton of sexual assault back in the 1980s. Speaking to CNN earlier today, the Trump campaign's CEO, Steve Bannon, who hasn't talked to the media very much since assuming that position, apparently dubbed his boss the, quote, master of the head fake. All right, John, it's a big night. It's the last known big night of the campaign. What are you looking for?
Well, I'm looking for the only question of things seems to me that matters at this point is, given the weight of polling and the trajectory of the race, can Donald Trump do something, anything, in this last debate, which will almost certainly be the least watched of the three debates, but still tens of millions of people watch it. So something he can do that can fundamentally alter this race and somehow get him back in a position where he's not just totally out of it.
We know that Hillary Clinton comes into her third debate in a row totally prepared, gaming out every possible question from Chris Wallace, every possible attack from Donald Trump. I think Trump's only chance tonight is for him to focus on his anti-Washington message, to try to rise above some of the base-directed arguments he's made, and hope that Chris Wallace asks Hillary Clinton tough questions that Trump can step in on and follow up on. If Hillary Clinton is prepared for Chris Wallace's questions, I don't think there's anything Donald Trump can do to get her off her game. But if it ends up being effectively when Clinton's being questioned 2-on-1, I think he's got a chance, maybe, to have a debate in which Hillary Clinton is more on the defensive than he is.
Just as a matter of spectator sportdom, we have seen today, I think the factionalism within the Trump campaign is on full display. Trump alleging widespread voter fraud now. His campaign manager, as you said, his daughter Ivanka came out today and said he'll accept the outcome of the election. He's not going to reject the outcome of the election if he loses. The rational parts of the Trump campaign trying to pull him away from the brink of craziness. And yet then Steve Bannon basically saying we're going to bring a bunch of guests tonight that are going to turn this into another kind of circus here where we've got, people making accusations, trying to play head games with Hillary Clinton. This campaign is cleaved right down the middle in terms of how to deal with these closing days of the campaign.
Americans and certain members of the media who won't treat Trump like a serious person if he's going to bring people like this to the debate.
Yes, right. And it's a sideshow, right, of course. So the more we dig into our new Bloomberg Politics national poll, the worse things look for Donald Trump. Underneath that 9-point lead, Hillary Clinton is winning among groups that make up the core of Trump's coalition. Clinton is 2 points ahead of Trump among men, 46% to 44%. She's also up 4 points with non-college educated voters, 48% to 44%. She's also widening her gap significantly among the women and young voters, two groups that Trump needs to do better with if he had any chance of closing the gap with Clinton. When asked how voters would feel if Trump won, 62% said there would be panic if Trump won. Meanwhile, the campaigns are out with two new TV ads. Here's one by Hillary Clinton, an uplifting, inspirational spot that's airing in 7 battleground states, including Florida, Ohio, and North Carolina.
My vision of America is an America where everyone has a place. This is the America that I know and love. If we set those goals and we go together, there's nothing that America can't do.
Trump's new ad is only running in 3 states, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, and it targets economically anxious voters with a single-issue message.
Our economy once dominated the world, and our middle class thrived. Today, jobs are gone, factories closed, because of bad trade deals pushed by the Clintons that sent our jobs to other countries. Donald Trump's plan: renegotiate NAFTA, stop foreign nations from cheating us, cut taxes to reopen factories. Donald Trump knows business, and he'll fight for the American worker.
So, Mark, I'd like you to talk about the logic behind these ads, the political logic behind them, and how they fit into the campaign's strategies for these last 3 weeks of the campaign.
Clinton wants to be a little bit more uplifting, talk a little bit more in a positive way, and I think she'll try to do that tonight and certainly in the closing days of the campaign. That Trump ad, I can't tell you how many Republicans on social media and reaching out to me said, why hasn't that ad been on the air since the summer? That is his winning message if he has one. I think at this point, based on the private polling data I've seen from both parties, everything could go right for Donald Trump tonight and the rest of the way, and I'm not sure he could close the gap. He's fallen behind now in too many states. He doesn't have the resources. He doesn't have the discipline to close as strong as he would need to. And that ad, while good, the fact that it's only running in 3 states is campaign malpractice.
Let's just remember there's 2 important things to say about this. One is that the first thing you said is consistent with what we said yesterday about Trump's ethics message, another message that would have been great for him if he'd been hammering it since April or May. And the second is that we all know that in this environment, especially this huge free media environment that exists for presidential campaigns, any individual ad in a presidential general election that comes out this late, these ads at the end are basically noise. They're not going to really move very much. That's true of the Clinton ad too, by the way, although I think hers is significant in the sense that I think they are now starting to believe she's going to win, and that she has to start talking in a positive, uplifting way in order to make it possible for her to shift to governing.
Donald Trump's troubles over the last week have caused a sea change that is different from what you and I previously said. Previously, we said the Obama team in 2012 were very, very confident they would win, almost certain because they had so much data, and that the Clinton people weren't quite that certain. They're now more certain, I think, that they're going to win than President Obama was and his team was 4 years ago, because they have a lot of data and they've seen what Trump's bad run here of over a week has done to his numbers in the key states.
It's demonstrably the case that now in basically every battleground state except for Ohio, maybe Iowa, they are more ahead now in all those states than Barack Obama was in October of 2012. And although Hillary Clinton is a less strong candidate than Barack Obama was, Donald Trump is a lot worse candidate and has a lot more trouble than Mitt Romney ever did.
All right, one subject that might come up at the debate here tonight in Las Vegas is the WikiLeaks emails that were purportedly taken from the inbox and other portions of Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta's Gmail account. Republicans, including Trump, have been trying to use those disclosures against Hillary Clinton for a couple of weeks now. But there is at least one person who doesn't agree with his party's approach. Florida Senator Marco Rubio, running for re-election, explained why today in Tampa, Florida.
I personally will not be talking about any revelations that come about solely as a result of WikiLeaks. Our intelligence officials, who are not partisan people, have told us this is the work of a foreign intelligence agency. And we cannot be a country where foreign intelligence agencies can interfere or influence our political process. What I would say to my Republican colleagues, some of whom may be disappointed by the position I've taken, is today it's them, tomorrow it could be us. And just think about this. Do we really want to be a country where foreign leaders or foreign intelligence agencies can blackmail our elected officials and say to them that unless you do what we want you to do, we're going to release emails from your campaign manager, your wife, your daughter, your son, and we're going to embarrass you. So unless you want to be embarrassed, you better do what we want you to do. Is that what we want? Because I'll tell you, that's what Vladimir Putin does.
So, John, is Rubio a one-off, or other Republicans you think are going to adopt this position?
I don't know the answer to that question. I hope they do. And I think, just as we've been saying, where were some of these Donald Trump ads and messages for the last 6 months? Where was that Marco Rubio a year and a half ago? That Marco Rubio could have been the Republican nominee. I will say, and I know we both have been thinking about this a lot, whatever happens in this election, this will be an unprecedented election in this respect. We've never seen a hacked election before, and we've never seen an election where a foreign power, in this case Russia, has in such an active way tried to influence the outcome of an American election. And I think every politician in both parties should be sobered by this, regardless of who they're polling for. Yeah. They should be sitting there saying, we're in uncharted territory. It's ugly, dangerous territory.
This could go down in history as the WikiLeaks election, depending on what happens. And I think any other Republican nominee in our lifetimes would have called up the Democratic nominee and said, we must stand together, put out a joint statement, and denounce this. Donald Trump has chosen to continue to try to take advantage of it, and as have other Republicans. And good for Marco Rubio, but amazing that no one else has thought of doing this and said it as forcefully as he has.
Right, I totally agree. And again, I was doing when you mentioned this earlier today, I'm doing the mental exercise. I'm thinking of if this had happened in 2008, John McCain and Barack Obama would have been as one on this issue. In 2004, George W. Bush and John Kerry would have been as one on this issue. It's amazing. There are a lot of unprecedented things that happen in this election, a lot of deviations from the norm, but this may be the single greatest deviation from the norm. This story, this episode, and what it means for our democratic future.
Trump denies he hearts Putin, but he hearts WikiLeaks.
All right. Up next, we got more previewing of tonight's big debate here in Sin City, and later watch our pregame debate show at 8:30 Eastern right here at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. That coverage will, of course, be on Bloomberg TV, but it'll also be live streaming on Twitter. Just go to debates.twitter.com or follow @BPolitics to find it. We'll have analysis and guest interviews followed by the whole debate live on your smartphone, your laptop, your Apple TV, your Xbox, your iBox, whatever. We'll be back with Cecile Richards, a Clinton supporter and the president of Planned Parenthood, right after this. We're back here on the balmy campus of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, home of the Runnin' Rebels, and hosted tonight's third and final presidential debate. With us now is Cecile Richards. She's the president of Planned Parenthood Action Fund, a Hillary Clinton supporter, and the daughter of Ann Richards, the late, great former governor of Texas, the reddest of red states, where a stunning new poll of the University of Houston has Hillary Clinton within the margin of error. She is trailing Trump by only 3 points in that survey, 41 to 38%. Cecile, welcome. Tell us, we're going to get to some news in a moment, but just since I read the thing about Texas already, can Hillary Clinton win Texas?
It's obviously within the margin, and it's pretty interesting. I've been thinking about Mom's race a lot. You know, she ran against a guy who was a millionaire, who turned out had never paid taxes, who made jokes about sexual assault, and she never had a poll showing her winning, and she beat him. And I think there is a kind of an energy and enthusiasm among Clinton supporters in Texas that is completely absent among the Republican Party in Texas. So it could happen.
Clayton Williams is the man you're referring to,
yes.
Right? Okay, just for the record.
Yes, for history's sake, for those who don't remember. But and Ann Richards was elected against all odds in that state, and again, so I think it could certainly happen.
Democrats haven't won a statewide race in Texas in a good long while.
Not since Mom, I think.
That's right. If she won, what would it mean for the politics of Texas and for Hillary? If Hillary Clinton won Texas, she'd win the White House. What would it mean for a Clinton presidency if she could win Texas?
Well, I think, look, the great thing about Hillary Clinton is she is someone who knows how to work across the aisle and to bring people together to solve problems. And I think people are desperately looking for that, not only in this election, but they're looking for that in the next president. And I think Texas is a state that is trending more moderate. You know, obviously there's a huge growth in different populations there. So it will be a good sign, and frankly would breathe a lot of energy into the Democrats in Texas who've been looking for a victory for many, many years, as you say.
So about an hour and 45 minutes from now, we learn there's going to be a press conference nearby here being held by Danny Williams, who is the gentleman who claims to be son of Bill Clinton, claims to be the abandoned son of Bill Clinton, and he's going to be at this press conference demanding a DNA sample from President Clinton to prove the paternity. This is obviously another Trump-related stunt. We had one at the last debate. We're now seeing it here at this debate. What's your comment on that? On what this has become, on these kinds of incidents, and this one in particular?
I mean, I think this whole campaign by Donald Trump has been one of negativity, and it's really discouraging to see when there's so many issues that the American people care about, job creation, health care, a lot of issues, that instead of talking about those in the debates, that he continues to go into the gutter. I think that, look, I think this debate tonight, many people, given how Hillary Clinton is doing, given the move of women and young people and moderate voters to her, I think a lot of people will be looking at this debate and seeing her as the future president, and I hope that we will have a conversation about issues and not just about these sort of, you know, really tactics that are not related to what this election's about.
Isn't your view entirely that Bill Clinton's, that this has been a big part of the campaign after the last couple of weeks, is your view that Bill Clinton's past and the alleged sexual abuse that he perpetrated on women, alleged, right, that has no place in the campaign, totally irrelevant, should be completely out of bounds?
I think people know everything about Bill Clinton. I mean, he was president a long time ago. The important thing is Hillary Clinton is running for president, and people are evaluating her on what she wants to do for the American people. I think she has clearly laid out her plans. I would say Donald Trump has been very incapable. I mean, he's run a campaign where you can't tell what he wants to do or what his policies are. He's frankly just run a campaign of negativity and personal attacks, going after women, going after immigrants, going after Muslims, going after disabled people. I think the American people want something more, and I believe Hillary Clinton has showed that she goes high when he goes low. And again, I certainly hope that's what we see tonight, is that Donald Trump finally talking about plans and issues and not about personal attacks.
He proposed this week limits on people leaving the executive branch and going to lobby for corporate interests. Is that a good idea?
You know, I don't know the exact particulars of that.
Of trying to put more limits on the ability of people to go through the revolving door, be in government, and then go lobby.
Look, I think there's a lot of things we need to change. I think Citizens United is number one. I mean, I think obviously we have seen money in politics has been a corrupting influence, and there probably are other things we should consider. I got to be honest, though, I think one of the things that's important to me in this debate is there are some real differences between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton that haven't been covered in the debates. Obviously, I care passionately about women's health care. You know, we at Planned Parenthood serve 2.5 million people every single year for health care. Donald Trump says he wants to end that. He said he wants to end, overturn Roe versus Wade by appointing justice to the Supreme Court that would do that. These are issues that actually affect people. You know, he's against equal pay for women. He's against the minimum wage. I think Hillary Clinton has put forward specific proposals about how she would improve the lives of women, of families, and that's really where the American people want to focus. Again, I hope tonight, I'll be excited to be in the audience. I I hope that's what we get to tonight.
All right, Cecile Richards, we're going to leave it there. Thank you for coming on the show. It's always great to see you. We will get the Trump side of this story and other stories from one of his advisors, Boris Epshteyn, after these words from our sponsors.
We are just hours away from the third and final presidential debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump here tonight in Las Vegas to preview how Mr. Trump is preparing and what's on the line for him on this important evening is Boris Epshteyn, a campaign senior advisor. What do you know about Donald Trump's plans for tonight on the debate stage?
The plans are really a continuation of what we saw in the first two debates, and it's to deliver the message on national security, on the economy, on the ethics reform on draining the swamp, which has been a motto for the last several days, but then to prosecute the case against Hillary Clinton and talk about the quid pro quo information that's just been coming out about Patrick Kennedy. Of course, talk about the collusion between, that we know from WikiLeaks, between her campaign and the DOJ and her campaign and the media, and talk about the email server and on and on. There's a treasure of riches,
about
right?
10 different messages. Is there one that you think he's going to emphasize or needs to emphasize this evening more than the other 9?
I think it's important. There's, as we've talked about before, right? There's two paths to an election victory. It's to make sure the American people know why you are the person that should be president, and for that we talk about the messages I discussed: economy, national security, ethics, reform, etc. But also why the other person should not be president. And in this case, there's such a stark contrast, from my perspective and a lot of the country perspective, between the two. So you go on those two parallel paths, and they get you to victory in November 8th.
So we just got word that an hour and a half from now there's going to be this press conference with Danny Williams, who accuses Bill Clinton of being his father, where he's going to demand a paternity test or some DNA evidence. Is the Trump campaign involved in that event?
I don't know. I've been here doing media, so I couldn't tell you.
So you don't know if the campaign sponsored that event? You don't know if you don't even know if that's a Trump campaign event or not?
I don't know anything about it until you asked me about it right now, so I wouldn't want to comment on it and give you any information that I.
This is literally the first you're hearing about it. Is that what you're saying? Like you didn't know it was even happening?
About the press conference? I've been in the Cox Pavilion running between about 10 different interviews, as your colleague here saw. So
the campaign manager or the campaign CEO Steve Bannon said today in the airport that there were going to be special guests who were arriving who would expose Bill and Hillary Clinton. He said that on the record to a CNN reporter. So one sort of suspects that maybe this person's going to be a guest. Is Danny Williams going to be a guest of Mr. Trump's? Do you know about that?
I don't.
Who the guests are going to be?
I don't. And like I said, I'm focusing on the issues, and I'm focusing on the message that we're going to be delivering here and for the next 3 weeks. So I could not tell you the specifics about that. But again, what we're talking about today, what we're focusing on, are those key issues that American people care about.
We've seen thousands of pages of John Podesta's emails from WikiLeaks. Is there one you would point to say, if I could get everyone in America to just focus on this one email, Hillary Clinton, they would see they shouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton?
There is. It's the email which Jennifer Palmieri says, "Take the money," with exclamation marks after it, about taking money from lobbyists who are registered with Forrest, so they're lobbying on behalf of foreign governments. And that "take the money" really is a motto, really is a slogan for the Clintons over the last 40 years.
That wasn't an email from Hillary Clinton, it was from one of her advisors. You think it represents the ethos of...
It represents what the Clintons stand for, is take the money at really, at the fault of everything else. Take the money, take the $400,000 for a speech to say that you want open borders. Take $250,000 for a speech where you say that, where you talk about the fact that you really are in support of the TPP, or talk about how great the banks are. Take the money, take the, why did she have that private server? Why did she set it up? I'm confident and positive that the reason is because there's such a connection between the Secretary of State and that Clinton Foundation, those paid speeches. It was all about taking the money, because that's what the Clintons have stood for the last almost 40 years.
So your view is that if you think if the American people understood that the Clintons are rich and interested in money, that would be the end of her campaign?
My position, my view is that the American people have to know that Hillary Clinton is not interested in becoming president in order to make this country better. She didn't make this country better as Secretary of State. She wanted to be Secretary of State in order to peddle influence, peddle access. And that's what she will do when she's in the White House.
Donald Trump praised her as Secretary of State, praised her as a senator, praised her throughout as a First Lady. Previously, there's plenty of tape of it, right? That was his view not that long ago, that she was great in all those jobs.
She was an inconsequential senator. Only 3 bills with her name on it.
You're disagreeing with Donald Trump, who was on tape saying she was a great senator.
Whatever those quotes are from years ago, we all know she was an inconsequential senator and a terrible secretary. So look at Iran, look at Libya, look at Syria. She doesn't have one success to point to. She points to some deal she made with Russia, but then she says you can't even try to work with Russia.
Of course. Thank you very much. Good luck to you on your side tonight.
Thanks so much.
We're going to break all this down with the Dean of the D.C. Political Press Corps. Dan Balls, The Washington Post, joins us after this quick break.
We are still here outside the Thomas and Mack Center, where early today, Donald J. Trump skipped his scheduled walkthrough of the debate stage. Here to wildly and widely speculate about what we can expect from the Republican nominee tonight is the chief correspondent of the Washington Post and seasoned soothsayer of political fortunes. That would be Dan Balls. Dan, I always think I should take with me to the roulette table because you'd know exactly where to put down the chips.
You're going to lose a lot of money if you try that.
What's going to happen tonight, Dan? It isn't going to matter.
I don't know what's going to happen. Based on the first two debates, it's going to be nasty and ugly and, all of the, adjectives we can use. We might be surprised at moments that I won't say civility of the debate, but the seriousness of the debate. I mean, there's some issues that I'm sure Chris Wallace is going to raise that the two have real differences on. But I think that the tone of it is likely to be what we've seen in the past, in large part because Donald Trump is Donald Trump, and he has shown no sign since the second debate that he's going to go in a different direction than he's been taking up to now. So.
I know it's an evolving story, but what role would you say WikiLeaks is playing right now in this campaign?
Well, a larger role than it did a week ago when some of this first popped out, because at that moment the issue of Donald Trump and women was the dominant story, and two things happened. One is he veered off course to go into the direction of claiming that this is a rigged election, in essence a diversion from a problem that he had to try to create the conversation that he wanted to create, and as we've seen for months and months, he's successful at that. Right. Doesn't mean those issues go away, but he makes the conversation something different. But the other is that there's the steady kind of drip, 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 and Hillary Clinton hasn't been confronted in a kind of sustained and serious way with some of those questions. I think that could happen. I mean, I would expect that Chris Wallace will have a number of those. I mean, Chris is a good questioner, and he's a very fair-minded questioner, so I think he'll have things that will put both in an uncomfortable position.
Is there, Mark just asked Boris Epstein about this, about what he would, if he were to get everyone in America pay attention to one of the WikiLeaks disclosures, what would it be? As you've looked at all of them, or many of them at least, beyond campaign tittle-tattle and gossip, is there stuff in there that you think is genuinely politically problematic in another environment where everyone was focused on it, would be like, wow, this is really a huge problem for Hillary Clinton?
Huge, I don't know if that's the right word, but I think serious problem is what does she really believe about some of these issues? I mean, we saw her move to the left during the campaign against Bernie Sanders. We know that's not what her roots are as a politician. We know she is both a pragmatist and more of a centrist than a lefty. She's always been more to the left than her husband has been, or seemingly has been. But on some of those issues, it is a question of what she really believes and how she would come down on these issues if she were president.
You've watched your share of these. The Trump campaign is now acknowledging Kellyanne Conway and others. He needs a comeback to win with just a couple weeks to go. What would the elements of a Trump comeback be besides a strong debate performance tonight? What would that require?
Well, it would require a more systematic and concentrated and disciplined argument against her, absent the theatrics that he brings to these, absent rigged election, absent, lashing out at his Republican colleagues, like whether it's Paul Ryan or Jeb Bush or anybody like that. I mean, stripping away. Having said that, we know what the odds of that are. But that would be one element. I think the second would be to figure out what is the one path that he has to win. I mean, he has very little options, very few options on the map. He is not campaigning in a way that suggests he has any idea of what he wants to try to do, which states are really the most important to him. I mean, we see more of that in the Clinton campaign. I mean, their sort of concentration on Florida, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and now, trying to make a play in Arizona shows a more strategic sense of what they want to do in the last few weeks than anything we've seen from the Trump campaign.
We've now had in the past few days Mike Pence, the running mate, Kellyanne Conway, the campaign manager, both say, no, there's not widespread voter fraud happening in America. And you've had Ivanka Trump come out and say, my dad's going to accept the result of this election, right? All of those things have happened in the last few hours. Do you think that Donald Trump is going to back off the message of that this is a fundamentally rigged election? Or is he listening to someone else? Is that his genuine belief? Is there someone winning a power struggle in the campaign? What's going on here with this, Dan?
Well, that power struggle has been going on for months and months and months. And the winner of that power struggle is always Donald Trump. It's not one faction or another. Donald Trump will end up doing what he wants to do. I assume he will move off, and I don't have any real information. I assume he will move off the rigged election when he finds something he would rather talk about that he thinks may be more provocative, more interesting, more inflammatory, whatever. So I think they all want him to move off that. I think they all want him, if he loses, to accept the result and to concede, graciously. But who can predict what he in the end will do?
It's one public pause, people talking about Texas as potentially being in play. You've covered a lot of Texas politics. Is that plausible?
Well, Mark, we did a 50-state poll with SurveyMonkey, the online polling operation, at the end of August, and we were the first ones who found that Texas looked competitive. Surprised everybody. I mean, I used to report out of there years and years ago. It's a very red state. So we said, okay, here's the result. Since then, there have been any number of polls. We went back in last week with SurveyMonkey. We had it at a 2-point race. There's another poll that's got it 3. It's another 4. My gut tells me that Donald Trump will still end up winning Texas, but it looks like it's going to be closer than we've seen in any recent election.
Seismic if she won it.
Oh, it would be seismic if she won it. Yeah, absolutely.
That's Lone Star State Dan Balls right there, the man. Texas, Dan the man. All right, Dan Balls, thank you for coming in today. Really happy to see you. Up next, we'll ask our campaign beat reporters what the candidates have in store for this evening. We'll be back from Las Vegas, Nevada when we return.
My father is in this to win it, and I'm not interested in talking about alternative outcomes. And of course, I think my father will always do the right thing. That's the type of person he is. But when you asked me before, do I think it's rigged? I think from a media perspective, it's very hard to get an accurate portrayal of who he is as a person or the business he's built, his professional accomplishments. It's borderline impossible. But to your point, if he'll either win or he won't win, and I believe he'll accept the outcome either way.
That was Ivanka Trump earlier today at Fortune's Most Powerful Women's Summit in Guinea-Miguel, California. This next segment we're calling the Genception block. On our set here to preview tonight's debate is Epstein, Jennifer, and Jacobs, Jennifer. Thank you both for joining us. Hillary Clinton has been virtually invisible over the last 5 days doing debate prep. As you've talked to her team, how are they feeling about tonight?
I think that they're feeling good. They're confident because of how the last two debates have gone from their perspective, which is just that she's been able to handle anything that Trump has thrown her way. I don't think that they see all of these guests as anything more than a stunt. That's a word that they've used. And they're just going to go into this trying to really get into voters' heads about who she is and how she not only will run for the last 3 weeks, but will also govern. They know this is the last big, giant audience of tens of millions of people that she'll probably be before, and they want that to just kind of set in, and that she is the credible choice for commander-in-chief is really where they're going.
In any campaign I've ever covered, if they were going through what they're going through now, which is bad news cycle after bad news cycle and cratering poll numbers at the national level and troubling poll numbers at the state level, there'd be panic and dissension. Is there panic and dissension in the Trump campaign?
No, there really isn't. I know that some of the senior staffers have had to give pep talks to some of the more junior staffers who think that this, it could be the end, because things really do look bad. But the senior staffers have confidence, and they say that Trump has confidence, and he has indeed been in really good spirits on the campaign trail. I don't think he's faking that. I know he prepared this morning by just spending time with family and friends. He skipped the walkthrough at the debate hall, projecting confidence that he didn't need to go see the podium. He had a little finance event at noon, so
what has put him in a good mood?
He thinks his touchstone has been the polls all along, as you know. And yesterday in Colorado, he finally said, I don't believe the polls anymore. He said, I believe that we are going to win based on this populist movement. I believe that my people are not being polled. We're going to have a groundswell. And what he believes is, the media has been writing the obituary on his campaign over and over and over again for months. And every single time the media is wrong, and he has prevailed. And that's what he has in his head, is that he will prevail again.
I'm going to stay with you and then ask you this related question, Jennifer. Danny Williams, press conference. How involved is the Trump campaign? Boris Epstein was out here saying, I have no idea. So is it a Trump campaign event? Is he here on Trump's campaign's dime? What's the deal with that?
No, I'm not sure who paid him to come out here or who's paying for his expenses, but it is not a Trump campaign event. It's separate from the Trump campaign.
Are you saying it was not coordinated by the Trump campaign?
That's correct.
They had nothing to do with it.
Who knows if they had absolutely nothing to do with it, but it was not coordinated by the campaign, and he is not an invited VIP guest at the debate.
Right. Who are Trump's guests going to be?
He has a bunch of people who are sympathetic figures to conservatives. He's got some angel moms. He's got Barack Obama's half-brother Malik. He's got the mother of a man who died in Benghazi, and a fiance of another man who died in Benghazi. Various people, and I'm told also there could be a couple other stunners that we don't know about. Anything that kind of digs into Hillary Clinton's past, and they take delight in just digging into her about her past scandals and her husband's past scandals, and so expect something unexpected.
Does any of this get into the Clinton campaign? I mean, I know they lived through the last debate where the craziest thing we all thought we'd ever see happened. So Danny Williams' appearance here, does that trouble people in Clinton world? The president, First Lady?
What I've heard sort of in terms of Bill is just that, to some extent, he's just a little maybe irritated that this is the direction that people are going in with his wife, that she is not being kind of judged on her own, but is being judged in terms of some of his past scandals. But I think that the Clinton people in general, they have always kind of claimed that she's a pretty unflappable person, and I think she's shown that in a lot of ways that she is. Trump people were saying after the last debate that she seemed slightly rattled by having those women in the crowd. Clinton people said, no, she wasn't rattled at all. And you could see that because she was never nervous or upset, and she was just confident the whole time. And I think that that's kind of what they expect she'll do again today, regardless of who Trump brings into the crowd or what he brings up. He brings up Vince Foster or something. I think that she's still ready to go for it. She's heard everything and anything and is ready to go for it.
Let me ask you a question that requires a very sophisticated judgment about the media. Debate I was listening to today between some Clinton folks. They've put out a bunch of WikiLeaks stuff, but none of it's been huge, game-changing material. if the people who are putting this stuff out are really sophisticated, do you think they've miscalculated if they're holding back something big now? Is the press attitude, if they put out something big, we've seen a bunch of stuff that isn't that big? Or is the press still open to some big revelation?
I think people are open to a big revelation. I think that, I think everybody is very much aware that this is hacked material. This is not a leak, an intentional leak. This is people stolen. The FBI seems to be saying it's the Russians, and that the press will all kind of filter it through that. But I think there is this question of, is there something bigger coming? We asked Jen Palmieri about this on the plane yesterday flying out here, and she kind of said, we're not really worried about what's going to come out in the rest of Podesta's emails. Maybe it's something else. There could, we're still 20 days out, and if they've been parceling this out day by day, it seems like most of this is just kind of staff and inside the Beltway kind of discussion rather than it being anything that shakes at the core of the campaign. But we could see something different in the days to come.
Did the Trump campaign react today to what Marco Rubio said, that this WikiLeaks stuff shouldn't be used by Republicans?
Not yet, and I'm waiting to see if that comes up in the debate. Will he ignore Marco Rubio and use those WikiLeaks topics in order to drill into Hillary Clinton, or will he actually respect Marco Rubio and skip over that?
Any normal candidate, after giving the speech he gave yesterday about government ethics reform and the proposal of term limits, that would be a huge part of what he does on stage here tonight. At the same time, we hear discussion he's going to go after Hillary Clinton on health and all these other matters. There are obviously a tug of war going on in the campaign and inside Donald Trump's head. What's your betting on which side of that tug of war will prevail tonight?
Well, his campaign CEO, Steve Bannon, talks about how Trump loves a head fake. Steve Bannon loves a head fake, too. So on the campaign trail in the last day or so, Trump has been very disciplined, very shackled. He's stuck to his teleprompters again, rolling out these policies about lobbying reform and term limits. And he's veered away from attacking the women who have accused him of misconduct. He's veered away from attacking fellow Republicans. So he's been very restrained and disciplined. So will he continue to do that? Probably not.
You think that's the head fake, and he's going to go totally ballistic tonight?
It could be like a tabloid fest.
Jennifer Jacobs, Jennifer Epstein, thank you both. Up next, the rigged system meets Ocean's 11 right here in Vegas when we come back.
There's been a lot of talk lately about whether this election is rigged, has been rigged, will be rigged, most of it by Donald Trump, of course. To get to the bottom of this little rumor, we've sent our resident con men, Alexander Trowbridge and Matt Negrin. travel all over Las Vegas for tonight's debate, and they channeled their inner Danny Ocean to try to pull off the heist of the century.
You want to knock over a casino? An election?
Not just any election.
Do you believe this election could be rigged?
The presidential election?
This is going to be a $2.5 billion presidential campaign?
Do you have any idea how impossible it is to rig an election?
First, you'd have to get past the bipartisan election officials stationed at every polling place.
On top of that, you've got the poll watchers monitoring those officials.
Then there's the party lawyers. It's been rigged before. It can happen again. Huey Long.
That was more than 80 years ago for a Louisiana state ballot question. And they got caught.
Huey Long didn't have a computer.
Millions of people are going to be watching this. Millions.
Everyone's on the lookout.
More than 20 voter registration systems have already been probed to the point of concern.
That's just probing.
2 intrusions have already been confirmed.
We're talking patchwork here. Over 10,000 voting jurisdictions. Clunky as heck.
That's just your opinion.
That's the opinion of the director of the FBI. And he means that in a good way.
But we don't need to hack the entire system. We just need one vulnerability on the map.
It takes just one swing state, and in that state, just one swing county.
Many precincts in Pennsylvania use computer equipment without a backup paper trail.
Some of these systems are still running Windows 2000.
In one county in Virginia, they were protecting their votes with a 5-digit encryption key.
What, ABCDE?
Bingo.
They fixed that last year.
But there's still a way in.
The Diebold AccuVote TS, paperless voting machines. Thanks to our friends at Argonne National Laboratory, we know it only takes $26 to hack this baby.
Guys, it's getting way too expensive for my blood.
There's got to be another way.
The most watched debate of all time, and what a show it was.
Fox News calls it the brain room. In the brain room are reams of binders, and in those binders, every question the candidates have been asked on the debate stage, every position they've taken.
How do you know all this?
I got a man on the inside. It's Brett Baer. I interviewed him in March.
Control the binder, control the moderator.
So how do we get that binder?
You got to get to the debate.
In 2012, 93 million did not take part in our democratic process.
I don't know why you're going through all of this trouble. Why don't you just institute repressive voter ID laws to fix a problem that's statistically irrelevant? Or gerrymander the districts, then you can keep powerful people in power. Or make Election Day a weekday, and then voter turnout never goes above 63%. I'm just kidding, those are already happening.
Looks like we're going to the debate. We're just supposed to walk onto that stage, swap out the binder, manipulate the debate, and steal this election. Without getting caught?
Yeah.
You guys know how to get into this debate?
Why do this?
Because the House always wins. Because you've got 235 million eligible voters, only 2 major parties, and one national narrative that tells me everything that's wrong in my life can be solved at the ballot box.
You've been practicing that speech, haven't you?
A little bit. It felt like I rushed it. Did I rush it?
No, I liked it. No, it was good. I liked it.
This election's not being rigged, and I'm explaining to you why it's not being rigged in Florida. We have 67 counties in the state, each of which conduct their own elections. I promise you there is not a 67-county conspiracy to rig this election.
I am in charge of elections in Ohio, and they're not going to be rigged. I'll make sure of that.
Our elections may not always be completely perfect, but they are legitimate. They have integrity, and everyone needs to respect the outcome.
Man, if you watch the show ever, you'll already know that that piece was directed, edited, shot by the masterful Griffin Hammond. Man, that guy is so good, and so are the people in his team. We'll be right back.
Watch the big debate tonight along with our pre- and post-game shows right here on Bloomberg TV. You can do that. But if you're looking for a new way, a mobile way, to catch all the action, never fear. Our WADR pitchman and Twitter addict, Alex Trowbridge, has this very important public service announcement about how you too can follow all of us this evening.
Everyone's talking about the final presidential debate, but you can't figure out how to watch it. There's gotta be a better way. Hi, I'm Alexander Trowbridge, and I'm here with the solution. Bloomberg Politics is live streaming the debate for free on Twitter. It's easy. On your computer at debates.twitter.com. On your phone, follow @BPolitics. Join the millions of people watching. Our pregame special debate coverage starts at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. You can actively comment on the debate and whatever these guys are saying while you watch. Perfect for the opinionated multitasker. Perfect for people who have cut cable. Unless you're watching this on cable, then please don't cut cable. Debates.twitter.com. It's free.
Well, it's common to say at these debates we don't really know what's going to happen, but we really don't know what's going to happen.
I was actually going to talk about Trowbridge, and I went from being like the kind of like the Brad Pitt character in Ocean's 11 to being like the Macintosh guy trying to give me tech support. Plays a lot of different roles.
Versatile.
Kind of incredible.
Yeah, big debate here tonight. We're going to have all the action again, 8:30 on Twitter and Bloomberg Television, then the full 90-minute debate, and then our post-game show. Both platforms available to you on Bloomberg Television and on Twitter. Thanks for watching. We'll see you at 8:30 Eastern Time. Until then, sayonara.
I'm Mark Crumpton. You're watching Bloomberg Technology. Let's check first word news. Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump will be in Las Vegas tonight for the third and final presidential debate. A new poll from Bloomberg Politics shows Clinton ahead 47% to 38% in a four-way matchup. With all due respects, Mark Halpern and John Heilman will host a pre-debate broadcast beginning at 8:30 p.m. New York time. Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal is criticizing Mylan's $465 million settlement with the Justice Department over allegations the drug maker overbilled Medicaid for its EpiPen. Blumenthal told Bloomberg TV the settlement was a sweetheart deal.
It happened so quickly without an investigation and full fact-finding and accountability. And by the way, Mylan can also take a pre-tax charge against its quarterly earnings for that $465 million.
A spokeswoman for Mylan declined comment. Russia's threatening to retaliate after a British bank terminated the account of Russian state-run TV channel RT. NatWest Bank's reviewing the decision. The Kremlin warned that Moscow would respond, quote, in a practical manner. A record 60% of American adults support legalization of marijuana. That's according to a new Gallup poll. When Gallup first asked about the issue in 1969, just 12% of Americans were in favor. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. Bloomberg Technology is next.
This is Bloomberg Technology on Bloomberg Television and streaming live on Twitter. We are at the Vanity Fair New Establishment Summit in San Francisco, where we're hearing from some of the most influential voices in tech and innovation shaping the future. This hour we'll be joined by GE Vice Chair Beth Comstock and Discovery Communications CEO David Zaslav, plus some of Silicon Valley's most outspoken venture capitalists, Benchmark Capital's Bill Gurley and Sherpa's Shervin Pishavar, both investors in Uber. Plus, we head to Austin for an exclusive conversation with Dell founder and CEO Michael Dell. But first, to our lead. We begin with GE. The company's made a big push to position itself as a digital industrial company. But it's not hard to find skeptics wondering whether a big industrial conglomerate can hold its own in Silicon Valley. GE Vice Chairman of Business Innovations, Beth Comstock, joins us now here live from the summit, as well as Brad Stone, our global executive editor of tech. Beth, let's start with you. You know, you've been in this vice chair role now for about a year. You were working at GE for a long time before that. But I'm curious, what surprised you most about this new role?
Well, more meetings. That's not the good part of it. But I think the fact that just we are at this very interesting time in the company, and innovation is happening in so many dimensions, and we're trying to keep pace with everything. So I think the fact that we're focused on it is really a great thing.
Emily mentioned the pitch of GE as a digital industrial company. Yeah. How well are you guys doing, here in Silicon Valley in the war for talent and in the marketplace with some of your digital services?
Well, obviously it's early days. We've been at this about 6 years. We declared the industrial internet as part of our future, repositioned ourselves. I think for us it's really that intersection of the physical and the digital, the hardware and the software. And so we need to continue growing the hardware base. At the same time, we're recruiting great software people. We are positioned out in the East Bay here in the San Francisco area, and we're hiring great talent. I think it's a different kind of challenge than people have been hiring for here in Silicon Valley and in the Bay Area. So I think that creates its own kind of momentum. Huge data sets, big challenges with healthcare, energy, transportation. So I think with that comes really a different mission, I think, for some people who are looking for what's next in the software space.
We're at a moment where some people feel we're in a period of technological stagnation, and we're also seeing rockets and self-driving cars. How do you balance, as a big corporation, investing in companies, innovating from within, and acquiring?
Well, I think you have to do, as a big company, you probably have to do all of those things. And I think over the past decade or so, we would have seen us evolve our model where we're continuing to do core innovation. I think often core innovation doesn't get enough attention for what it should. I mean, you have to keep innovating the core to keep going. We've done quite a bit at going into new spaces, renewable energy being one a decade ago with wind energy, now digital for us, and doing a lot more partnerships, partnering with startups. That's what's brought us out here to Silicon Valley, not just investing, but creating new businesses with startups and partnering. So I think you're seeing more and more bigger companies realizing you have to have a portfolio of all of those things.
You also had a partnership with Microsoft over the summer for your Predix operating system. Tell us what that is. I know it's a small part of the business now. What's the vision for it?
Well, Predix is the operating system for our part of the industrial internet. And it has to be built for industrial scale data, the ability to crunch large data sets, analyze all the data analytics, all the storage that has to happen. Not everything's in the cloud, some's on premise. So there are just unique challenges that industrial data brings about. Microsoft, we announced a partnership with them and Azure. We've got a lot of great partners. I think that's one of the things you're seeing a lot with bigger companies is you can't do it all yourself. You have to figure out where's your competitive advantage and where do you partner.
Talk to us a little bit about GE Ventures and how it relates to the rest of the company. Obviously, you oversee innovations, but there's this more specific area, and people here in Silicon Valley are, of course, very curious about it.
Right. Well, we've had our GE Ventures team for about 4 years here. We're in Menlo Park, and we were able to attract some really amazing venture capitalists and entrepreneurs in residence. And I think maybe in the beginning it'd be like, what is GE really going to do here? And it's created really great momentum. And so with ventures, not only do we invest in some startups, but more and more we're partnering with them for commercial applications. For example, creating a drone as a service opportunity that we're developing right now here in Silicon Valley to go and work with railroad customers, for example. We're also incubating new businesses. One we're very excited about called Vitruvian, which is a cell therapy, immunotherapy data play, and it's being incubated here with a partnership with Mayo Clinic. So I think you're seeing more of those models coming from us. We're able to draw from really great entrepreneurs who want to take on these kind of challenges.
And a historic move recently for GE. You moved the headquarters to Boston.
It's a big deal in Boston.
Why Boston, and are you integrating with the local startup community there?
We're integrating in a big way with the local startup community. I think there's a new model, certainly for GE. If you look at us over the past decade, much more global, much more embedded in local markets. And I think this understanding of the ecosystem, we all throw that word around, but it's about partnerships. And so our headquarters, it made sense to have it in a place where we could be part of academic ecosystems, startup, a lot happening in life sciences, advanced manufacturing, robotics in Boston that made it really good for sort of GE's next act in a corporate sense.
So you're required to be a Red Sox fan now?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm ready to go there, but I think there are quite a few GE Red Sox fans who will wave the flag.
We're poised for potentially a lot of technological disruption that could lead to a lot of societal and political change with the rise of AI and other technologies. Given that we're 3 weeks away from a very big election, how much do you think is at stake here when it comes to innovation, when it comes to entrepreneurship?
I think a lot's at stake really in every country around the world. What do you need for innovation? You need great education systems. You need the right infrastructure, technology, the hardware and the software, and you need less bureaucracy. You need to incent the innovators to go fast and go forward. You need the right kind of financial incentives. And so I think whatever happens out of this election, you want to hope for innovation's sake that those things are put in place. And I'd say a vision really helps too. Where are we trying to go? How do we get everybody focused?
All right, Beth Comstock, General Electric Vice Chair. Great to have you
Thanks,
here.
Emily. Thanks, Brad. Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
For joining us. Well, as we were just discussing, the 2016 presidential election is on the mind of everyone here at the Vanity Fair New Establishment Summit. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton set to battle it out in the desert tonight for the final debate before Election Day. We sat down with Graydon Carter, the editor of Vanity Fair, and asked him why he decided to take such a public stance on Trump. Take a listen.
I think that Donald Trump is not your average candidate. We didn't endorse anybody. We've never endorsed anybody. But I thought that I've had a closer look at him as a journalist than most other people have. And I wanted to write about what I saw in this man. And I think it just has not been a great year for politics. And whatever happens in the election, and I don't think he will get in, but it'll leave a stain on the process.
Brad Stone still with me here. It was interesting in talking about his view on whether the media has become sort of a culprit, a whipping boy in this conversation, and he sort of agreed that it's the media's fault too.
Yeah, no, it's indisputable. Yeah, and Les Moonves was saying actually, nobody kind of took Donald Trump's candidacy seriously last year, and everyone thought he was good for ratings. And of course, everyone's talking about the debate and the election today here at the Vanity Fair New Establishment Summit. But I don't get the sense that anyone's particularly worried about the election.
Really?
I think that there's a lot of interest, but I think the polls have maybe taken care of the concern.
I think people are calmed by the polls, but there's sort of this feeling that if it doesn't happen the way the polls are saying, it could be very dangerous, and therefore we need to.
Everybody wants to watch.
Yes. All right, we'll be right back with more from the Vanity Fair New Establishment Summit. Emily Chang with Brad Stone. Still to come, we will head to Austin for an exclusive interview with Michael Dell, his thoughts on the political climate and whether the economy is really as bad as the candidates claim. This is Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang. One stock we are watching, eBay shares plunging in extended trading. The company forecasting fourth quarter revenue and profit that may miss analyst estimates. eBay has been struggling to expand its online marketplace in an e-commerce industry dominated by Amazon. Tech innovators and influencers are gathered here in San Francisco for the Vanity Fair New Establishment Summit, but also in Austin, Texas, because the annual Dell World Conference is underway, now called Dell EMC World, thanks to the company's $67 billion acquisition this year. Bloomberg's Eric Schatzker sat down with CEO Michael Dell for an exclusive conversation and asked about the topic on everyone's minds this season. What is at stake in this presidential election? Take a listen.
You know, we'll work with whoever is in charge, and I think as we look at this, we're quite focused on some big issues around cybersecurity, trade, competitiveness. Those are the things that you would think are important to us, and they are. I think some of the rhetoric that I'm hearing in this election is absolutely ridiculous.
You're referring to what specifically?
Well, if you think about trade, we have a very small percentage of the world population, yet we have a much higher proportion of the global GDP. So as it relates to global trade, America's already won. and we export the things that are driving the world forward. And so to say that, we're not going to trade with the rest of the world, this makes no sense at all.
You have been a Republican donor in the past. If the election were held today, there's almost 20 days to go, who would you vote for?
I will exercise my constitutional right to keep my own ballot private.
But you will be voting.
Thank you. I will be voting.
Good. Everybody should be voting. One frustrating aspect of the post-crisis recovery has been the slow pace of business spending. What do CEOs tell you about why they aren't spending?
I think in some areas we're seeing certainly pretty active spending. This digital transformation is on. It's game on, inside companies. Security, they're very worried about the whole cybersecurity world. Productivity and the tools. We see more and more organizations realizing that if they don't have the best and most modern tools for their workforce isn't going to want to be there.
Yet productivity growth is a huge problem for the economy.
Well, some of it is normalized as two firms both utilize the same tool. Right, the productivity gets washed out, and now of course you can have access to more information than the president had 25 years ago for free, right? So there are some big changes that are going on. I do think there is some measure of uncertainty, that's related to the election. I think both political parties have been calling the economy much worse than it really is.
You don't see it that bad?
I don't. I really don't. I think the U.S. economy is in a far better spot than most economies around the world.
Do you share the view that the surge we've seen in public sector debt since the financial crisis, the rise of populism, manifestations like Brexit, for example, demographic and other structural changes mean the economy is stuck in this, call it, new normal of 2% GDP growth, or do you have a different view?
I don't really know the answer to that. I do believe that the pace of change is accelerating, and that creates some, kind of problems and harmonic distortion in the sense that can people adapt as quickly in terms of skills and capabilities as the world is changing? Now, if you look at it from the fundamental view of technology, the ingredients, they don't have feelings. They're not waiting for somebody to be ready. The future doesn't care if you're ready. Okay, so we care if you're ready, but it's important to recognize here that there have been some big changes. Right, you have this enormous surge of emerging market, workforce that's come in. And then you have all of the automation, productivity, technology that is much more efficient. You know, manufacturing doesn't require as many people as it used to 10, 20 years ago. So that creates some difficult challenges for society.
That was Michael Dell speaking to our very own Eric Schatzker. Coming up, Discovery Communications' $100 million bet in digital media. We'll talk with CEO David Zaslav about the investment in Group 9. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Technology, coming to you live from the Vanity Fair New Establishment Summit in San Francisco. Discovery Communications is investing $100 million in a digital media holding company. Group 9 Media is made up of several millennial-focused brands like Thrillist, Now This, and The Dodo. The investment will let Discovery move beyond its legacy linear television business. And joining me now here, David Zaslav, CEO of Discovery Communications, still with us as well, our global executive editor of tech, Brad Stone. David, thank you so much for being here. We'll start with the summit because you are a sponsor. You've got a big setup, virtual reality setup. You've announced a new initiative to protect tigers. Tell us more about this.
First, we love the Vanity Fair Summit. Graydon Carter is a great curator of all the things that we should be paying attention to, and there's a lot of great people here. It's a platform for us to talk about our VR. We're the leader in virtual reality. We have more content, and our app is reached, we're approaching 100 million people. And so as our content, whether it's Discovery or Animal Planet or Oprah or Science, when our content gets closer to real, we think our content can really shine. We really were able to take advantage of the conversion to HD. And so we think leadership in VR is a big deal. And so we have that on display here. And as you said, we invested last week in a new company that we're excited about. We took our short-form video production entity, which is here in Silicon Valley. We contributed that in. That was getting about 500 million streams a month. And we put it together with Thrillist and The Dodo and Now This. And now we have an entity that's approaching 4 billion streams a month. We got a great leader in Ben Lair who's going to be running it. But we also have some real stakes in the ground. Not only are we the third or fourth largest player now in short-form media, but Now This is the leader on Facebook with news. Is the #1 place that people get news on Facebook. They have a number of Snapchat channels, and they have a great data infrastructure that Ben Lair built at Thrillist. So we think that we're going to be a scale player there. Ben's going to run it. He's terrific, charismatic, energetic CEO. And we own 30% of it, but we do have a right to take control after 2 years. And so we can now focus on supporting Ben to the right and building our core long-form business.
Is there an element of hedging your bets, depending on the future of the linear traditional business, that this is maybe your step forward into the new world?
I wouldn't say it's a hedge. I would just say that we need IP on every platform. There's 7 billion screens, and the old world was you have to be on TV. When it comes to the TVs around the world, we're the #1 platform media company. We have about 12 channels in every country in the world. So when it comes to people consuming brands on television, our business is growing and it's quite strong. But as they start to consume content on other platforms, we just need to make sure our IP is on every platform, and we're really trying to make sure we get as much share of audience on each one. And so this Group 9 Ben Lair venture gets us in short form, makes us one of the most meaningful players on Facebook and with Snapchat. But separate from that, we're really working on our IP, not just for TV, but for instance with sports in Europe.
Right.
We have Eurosport, so we're the leader in sports in Europe, and we've been aggregating IP. We have the Olympics for the next decade in Europe. We're the leader with tennis, cycling, winter sports, Olympic sports, and so in the aggregate, we're the #1 sports provider in Europe, and we've just launched in the last year a product that's called the Eurosport Player, but it's really sports Netflix. For $8, you get all of our sports IP on every one of your devices.
You mentioned Netflix, which of course has been floating around speculation about it as an acquisition target. I'd love to hear your thoughts on whether we're going to see high-level media consolidation. Of course, we saw CBS, Viacom, Comcast, NBC back in the day. Do you see Disney getting acquisitive? And if one domino falls, what happens to the rest?
Well, first, I think Netflix is a great company, and we love their model. And that's one of the reasons why we're imitating it. I think, the difference is that Netflix spends about $6 billion a year, and their economic model and platform is to get subscribers to pay them $8 or $10 a month. With our sports platform in Europe, our sports Netflix, we have $6 or $7 billion of sports IP over the next several years. We're going to be offering it direct. We do offer it direct to consumer, but our cost of content for that is zero. Because we already make money on Eurosport by using that content. And so we've looked at what Netflix has done. We think not only is it appealing, but the market gives it such a great multiple that if we could take our IP, it starts with sports, but all the IP that we have, whether it's science, animals, discovery, all that IP gets paid for where we get a significant margin on that business. And then if you could aggregate that IP as a second bite direct to consumer. And so we're looking at direct to consumer across the board. To your point of consolidation, so far we think we're big enough. But we did feel the need to really, over the last 4 or 5 years, drive ourselves into a leadership position with sports. With Oprah now, we're the #1 network for African Americans in the U.S. And in Latin America, we're the #1 provider of kids content. And so if you're going to survive, it isn't necessarily size, but you have to be really dominant in these super fan groups, whether it's sports, kids, for us also nonfiction. So I think you're going to keep your eye on the kind of IP that people feel they need to have. And that's what we're going to continue to try and gravitate into.
All right, David Zaslav, we could talk to you about this for hours, but we're running into a commercial break. But that's television, CEO of Discovery Communications. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great.
Up next, our coverage from the Vanity Fair New Establishment Summit continues. We'll sit down with Benchmark Capital's Bill Gurley. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio. Check us out on Twitter. We're everywhere. This is Bloomberg.
I'm Mark Crumpton. You're watching Bloomberg Technology. Let's get a check of first word news. The leaders of Germany, Ukraine, Russia, and France met in Berlin Wednesday for four-way talks aimed at reviving the stalled peace process in eastern Ukraine. The talks were the first time the four have met in over a year. The 2015 Minsk agreement, brokered by Germany and France, has helped end large-scale battles between Ukrainian troops and pro-Russian forces. However, attempts at a political settlement have failed. British consumers are starting to feel Brexit's bite. New data shows real wages rising at the weakest pace since early 2015 as oil prices and the weaker pound stoke inflation. The pressure looks set to intensify. Employment growth is slowing. Some economists are predicting price gains as fast as 3% next year. A police van rammed into protesters today in an anti-U.S. rally at the American Embassy in Manila. There are reports 3 student activists were hospitalized. Protesters are demanding an end to the presence of U.S. troops in the country, and they're backing a call by President Rodrigo Duterte for an independent foreign policy. Super Typhoon Haima slammed into the northeastern Philippines Wednesday. Haima is a Category 5 storm with winds gusting up to 140 miles per hour. Many villages lost power and intense winds tore the roofs off houses. People in the area were urged to move to higher ground. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. It's just after 6:30 p.m. Wednesday here in New York, 9:30 Thursday morning in Sydney. My colleague Paul Allen has a look at the markets. Paul, good morning.
Good morning, Mark. Bit of a mixed picture across the Asia-Pacific today. The NZX has been trading for 90 minutes now and is already off a 1/5 of 1%. Nikkei futures are looking mixed, but we are expecting modest gains here on the ASX at the open. We'll be keeping an eye on mining stocks when we get underway in a little under 30 minutes' time. Fortescue is out with first quarter production numbers. South 32 out with production numbers, as is Woodside. Rio Tinto, the big mine, has already released their third quarter numbers. Iron ore shipments were down 5% on maintenance at port and rail facilities, but metallurgical coal production was 2.1 million tonnes. And metallurgical coal's something of a nice little earner at the moment for the mining companies, with the spot price doubling over the past year. Also in focus again today will be shares in Crown Resorts. The casino operator holds its AGM in Perth in a couple of hours' time. Shareholders are likely to be asking a lot of questions about exactly why the share price stepped off a cliff this week and what's going on with those 18 staff detained in China and what it all means for the high rollers business here in Australia. Also out today, Australian unemployment expected to tick up a little to 5.7%. I'm Paul Allen in Sydney. More from Bloomberg Technology next.
This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang. We continue our special coverage now from the Vanity Fair New Establishment Summit in San Francisco, where we've been speaking to some of the most influential names in technology. Uber board member and Silicon Valley heavyweight Bill Gurley came in at number 26 on Vanity Fair's New Establishment list, moving up from last year to this. The influential venture capitalist has made big bets on Uber and Snapchat, to name a few. Joining us now to discuss the state of tech, Benchmark Capital partner Bill Gurley, and still with me, Brad Stone, our global tech editor. Bill, always great to have you here.
Thanks
Congratulations on moving up in the world. We have to start with Uber DD. You know, we're moving from wartime to maybe peacetime here, but it's sort of difficult from the outside to understand how this all is going to work, with Travis as an observer on the DD board and Chung Wei on the Uber board. Can you sort of explain how this plays out in reality?
Well, I don't know that there's a precedent for it, so we'll be finding our way, and some of those meetings are just starting to take place as we speak. I'm fairly optimistic that there'll be multiple points of collaboration. I mean, when you think about things like autonomous cars or mapping technology or routing algorithms, it strikes me that if the companies aren't directly competing in any regions, that there are ways that they can both get benefits from sharing. I think it will depend on, obviously, the evolution of the relationship.
Uber was spending heavily in China, maybe $1 billion or more a year. Where does it redeploy that capital? I mean, I know it'll try to get its economics positive now, but if you're an Uber competitor in India or Southeast Asia, how worried are you, or even here, Lyft in the United States, how worried are you that the eye of Sauron is now on you?
Well, but look, I do think that that's a thing. I think that the global ride-sharing market is one that's attracted a ton of capital, and most of the competitive assaults aren't better features or a new UI. They're discounts,
yeah.
and so it can get sloppy fast. And I happen to be aware that some of our competitors in their fundraising pitches have said, well, Uber's going to worry about getting profitable because they want to go public, and so then we're going to discount and come up their tailpipe. And if that's how they're going to think, then we have to kind of, take our $9 billion war chest and be prepared for battle. And so I think we're in that mindset.
Are you surprised at all that Snapchat is looking at going public earlier than Uber? It's a much younger company. Why is now the right time for Snapchat, but not the right time for Uber?
Well, I mean, I could talk for an hour, which you don't have, about the IPO situation, but I think there's been this really bad meme that's been spread in Silicon Valley about IPOs being bad, and I actually think it's in everyone's worst interest that that's been a thing. And Mark Zuckerberg famously said he should have gone public 2 years earlier because it made him better as a CEO. Evan, is not in the Silicon Valley world. He's outside of this echo chamber, and perhaps that allows him to have a more liberated
So when do your own portfolio companies start to listen to your wisdom
when
on
does
this
Travis
issue?
start to listen to you?
Well, I do think ride sharing is an exceptional business because of the issue that we just talked about. And if all of our competitors are going to say, well, we're going to take advantage of them because they're going to go public, then we're going to have to wait that out to figure that out. And I think while those things are going on, it probably doesn't make sense. But look, we've had a couple of 2 or 3 IPOs here recently. If you talk to the bankers, they say early 17 is got a really strong pipeline coming. So I'm hopeful.
This morning, Chamath was talking about the impact of SoftBank's $100 billion fund to invest in technology. He thought it would tilt the playing field toward entrepreneurs, away from investors. What do you think the impact of that massive fund with the Saudi Arabia Sovereign Wealth Fund is likely to have in the Valley?
Yeah, and that's a long subject also. I disagree with Chamath. I think excessive amounts of capital make it harder to compete, and I think it's negative for the best entrepreneurs because they can raise money in any environment, and if money's relatively free, it just leads to excessive competition, as we've talked about, and it makes it harder to succeed. So I disagree with that point. One of the reasons why I don't think we've seen a widespread reset, we've seen kind of a soft reset. Like people have gotten a little bit smarter. They're not doing as many dumb things. You're seeing an occasional company go out of business or bankrupt, but nothing wholesale. There's just a tremendous amount of money still available. And a lot of it's coming from Russia, the Middle East, and China. And it wants to diversify into American assets. And this is a large example of that same thing. But if you were to talk to a realtor in Woodside or Atherton, you'd hear the exact same story, ironically.
So what are the dangerous possibilities here? I mean, is there a reckoning coming? And if so, where, in what sectors, in what regions?
Well, I do think the problem of excessive capital, and I wrote a very long blog post on this, but it can cause the cap chart just to get loaded and loaded and loaded. These unicorns have raised $300, $400, $500 million. The only way to deploy that is to take huge burn rates. And so Copa and Nutanix come public, and you open the S1, and they're losing tons of money. And there are going to be very few unicorns that look anything other than that because of this dynamic. So excessive amounts of capital deployed lead to excessive losses, which leads to risk. And if it makes it harder to grow out. And so I think.
And yet Nutanix shares more than doubled on the first day.
Yeah, but it's already been shorted. And there's a lot of scarcity in that case. I think until you get post lockup, it's really hard to know. But it's a danger. You talk to any economist, like low global interest rates for 7 or 8 years is going to lead to really wacky things. You know, I'm not a macroeconomic, so it's hard to predict, but it's nutty. It causes nutty things to happen with valuations.
Are there any near-term events that could possibly, you know, create a seismic event here and shake up the
like
community?
An IPO out of Venice, California, or something like that? Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. That might work. We'll see.
But anything else? I mean, really, you know, what could happen as a result of the influx of cash, the perhaps lack of very compelling ideas or companies that actually should be funded?
One thing that could happen is you could end up in situations where the last dollar standing wins. And so I don't know much about the SoftBank thing. Someone said part of it's debt. You start handing out debt. If people can't repay it, you take over the whole company. And so, you know, someone could theoretically use capital in kind of a bully way, which is not something Silicon Valley's seen before.
Jim Chanos recently called Elon Musk's companies a bunch of science fiction projects gone awry.
Yeah.
I'm curious, would you buy Tesla or SpaceX stock now?
It's interesting because there are signs on both sides that could lead very smart people to either conclusion. So if you've ridden in or driven a Tesla, and my wife has one, it is a remarkable piece of machinery, and they've integrated software in a way that no American or European auto OEM ever has. And so you're like, wow, they really understand doing things differently. At the same time, you look at the losses, the missed production schedules, and this decision to merge with Solar City, and you could take that point of view that was presented here at the conference. And
so where do you shake out?
It's funny. I don't know. I mean, I think I see both sides of that. Luckily, I'm not a public investor, so I'm not forced to make that decision.
You've avoided food delivery since Grubhub, and I know in the past we've talked about it not necessarily being a good business, but why is that? Is it because of Uber Eats? Do you think Uber could take all?
I think any of these, you know, when capital gets widely available, venture capitalists take on more risk. One of the ways they take on more risk is they choose businesses with lower and lower gross margins, and they're just riskier to execute. Most of them are also consumer businesses, and if you discount, you can attract customers. And I think the press misses this a lot because they'll just count customers and say, oh, look, they're doing awesome. But if you're losing money on every transaction, you're not doing awesome. You're giving something away, and it's going to end. And I like to remind people that Webvan had the highest NPS score of any company we've ever worked with, right up until it went bankrupt, because you're giving away more value.
Customers love
and these are categories, you know, and ad networks and lending money where excessive capital can lead to these price wars, and things can go downhill
and
quick.
Nobody wins.
That can be an outcome.
All right.
Sirius XM.
Bill Gurley, partner at Benchmark Capital, investor in Uber and many other things. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
And 20-something on the new establishment list.
20-something, yeah.
All right, thanks, Bill. Still to come, we'll catch up with Power Angel investor Shervin Pishavar of Sherpa Capital. More Bloomberg Technology continues next. This is Bloomberg. Continuing now with a special edition of Bloomberg Technology from the Vanity Fair New Establishment Summit in San Francisco. We're joined now by power investor Shervin Pishevar of Sherpa Capital, known for investments in Uber, Airbnb, Munchery, also co-founder of the moonshot transportation startup Hyperloop. Also with me, our Bloomberg executive editor for tech, Brad Stone. Shervin, great to have you back here.
Great to be here
on the show. So let's start with Hyperloop. You just raised a new round of funding. People are so curious about the technology. Talk to us about the timeline and when we'll actually see this come to fruition.
Absolutely. Well, Friday we announced that Brent Callinicos, the former CFO of Uber, just joined us full-time to head up all finance for Hyperloop One, and we raised $50 million. And DP World, which owns it's the third largest port operator in the world, just joined our board and was part of the $50 million round, and that is fueling our ability to hit the timeline of doing the full-scale Hyperloop test with cargo in Q1 of 2017. So that's coming really fast.
Now, you did just get through some negative press surrounding a former partner in the business. Are you past that now? And what is Brent, obviously a lot of experience, CFO at Uber. He's not CFO at Hyperloop though. He's a special advisor.
He's chief financial advisor.
Okay, chief financial. Yeah. Explain the distinction. And are you past? Do you feel like the company now is past the difficulties?
Absolutely. We have Rob Lloyd, who is president of Cisco, as our CEO. Josh Geigel, who's my co-founder, he's president of engineering. He was the top guy at one of the top engineers at SpaceX. He's been leading engineering from the very early days. Was number 2 joining the company. And we had 200 people full-time, mostly engineers, and we're hitting our milestones. So we'll hit the big milestone of the major test. It'll be the first Hyperloop at scale in the world. That'll be in Nevada in Q1. And we're signing deals all over the world. And the leader of Dubai just announced that they want to build Hyperloop with Hyperloop One. And we're signing deals all over the world from Russia, China.
Now, are aspects of the Hyperloop underwater, and how much more expensive is that to build?
We have designs for that. So some of the offshore ports, because we're focusing on ports, will be able to do cargo offshore and also inland. So if you look at Long Beach Port, that's $200 billion of real estate value. And a lot of these port operators like DP World have to spend billions of dollars because they're at full capacity. They have to spend billions of dollars on real estate expanding, and here they don't have to do that anymore.
Let's talk a little bit about Uber, because you were one of the earliest investors in Uber. You saw what it could be before a lot of other people did, and now we are so far into the ride-hailing wars. They've just struck this big deal with DD. It's unclear how it's actually going to work in practice. How do you see ride-sharing market share shaking out globally? Is Uber one of 2 winners, one of 5 in the world? What does this actually look like?
Well, Sherpa Capital invested in Uber China as well. So we've put over $200 million into Uber, including in Uber China. So now we own a piece of DD as well. We think Uber itself, as a standalone company, in our analysis, is looking at 2018 beyond at 40 billion plus gross of revenue. You're looking at a profitable company at that point. It's a major force in the global economy.
So profitable by 2018?
That's my own analysis. But in terms of our belief in the company, we've predicted this before. We think this is a 200 billion plus company. I think DD itself is also within China. Is probably going to go from 35 billion to $100 billion company.
Are you worried about the regulatory obstacles they face in China?
In China, as much as I would have worried about Alibaba, I think DD is in a very good position in China.
So how well did you do on paper in the Uber China investment when you take into account that $35 billion valuation?
Sherpa is very happy with our position in DD because of our investment in Uber China, and we think that the leaders there are incredible, and they're executing at scale, and they will, as I predicted, I think they'll be a major company.
Lyft co-founder John Zimmer was on the show yesterday, and do you think Lyft survives? Do they remain a number 2? Do they?
Well, Scott Stanford, my co-founder of Sherpa Capital, called them a sideshow with you guys a couple weeks ago. I agree with him, not just because he's my co-founder and I like him, but he's right in his analysis. I think Lyft is in a very strong, very weak and precarious position compared to a very strong Uber and Didi on the global side.
One of my colleagues, Eric Newcomer, has been writing about the economics of the food delivery business, and Munchery, one of your portfolio companies, was the topic of one of his stories. And he looked at the sustainability of the business, the potential turnover of the CEO. Do you still believe as much in the vision of Munchery, which cooks its own meals and delivers them, kind of a sort of Amazon model in, I think, about half a dozen cities right now? Do you believe in it as much as you did 2 years ago?
Absolutely. Having people like Ron Burkle join as chairman, having Jeff Hausenbold, who's one of the most esteemed CEOs, join the board.
And potentially the next CEO, but that's not.
He's one of the names in the ring of very, very talented people we're looking at. And if you look at the unit economics of Munchery today, they're very positive. All of the cities are contributing positively to the business. We're now doing ready-to-cook meal kits across the country from one kitchen, similar to Blue Apron. So that's nationally delivered. And we're also now unlocked the ability to deliver from the New York kitchen all the way down to DC the same day because of our chilled model. So the economics are completely
those meals hold
superior.
up on the Excella?
They do. On the Hyperloop.
The structure of Sherpa is very unique, and I'm curious how it's working out. I mean, the mid-stage fund, for example, have you made any investments from that fund, and when do you expect to? And are you seeing enough innovation out there and good ideas to back?
I mean, one of the things they say is, Silicon Valley is not a physical place anymore. It's an idea, and it's spread virally, and the world is a startup. And so the opportunities to invest in incredible companies, no one could have predicted, as Brad's great story on Didi growing to scale in just a couple years from scratch. So these opportunities in China, in India, around the world are here. And the other thing is, the valuations are in terms of the opportunities we're seeing, are much more rational these days. And so that, to us, is a great opportunity. And in Sherpa Avarice, our mid-stage fund, as you referred to, we've got great investments in companies like Ipsy. We led a $100 million round in that company. That company had only raised $3 million before, and it's throwing off cash. It's doing incredibly well. And we did that investment with TPG.
Really quickly, what do you think Governor Andrew Cuomo in New York does with the Airbnb bill that is now on his desk, which probably will govern the future of Airbnb's business in New York? I know you're an investor in the company.
We're investors in Airbnb. We're big believers in that model. We introduced Jim Messina as a special partner at Sherpa Capital to help Brian and the team there build up their regulatory
prediction.
practice.
Does he sign it or does he veto it?
I can't predict what he's going to do, but we'll see.
Okay.
We'll be watching it, following it. Sherpa Pishavar, Sherpa Capital, great to have you here on the show.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for stopping by. All right, we'll be right back with more from the Vanity Fair New Establishment Summit. This is Bloomberg. One stock we are watching, shares of Tesla spiked after CEO Elon Musk tweeted that the company would post information about a product update at 8 p.m. New York time today, followed by a media Q&A. Musk has been secretive about what's coming, only saying that this will be, quote, unexpected by most, and that it's related to the Model 3. Analyst Ben Callow suggested in a note that this might be an energy storage product enhancement or different vehicle class, showing altogether. Coming up, Bloomberg's in-depth coverage of the U.S. presidential debates continues. Mark Halperin and John Heilman kick things off 8:30 p.m. New York time, followed by the debate itself at 9. Afterwards, Bloomberg is live from the Barclays Asia Forum in Singapore, where we'll be speaking exclusively with Barclays CEO Jess Stanley and Allianz Chief Economic Advisor Mohammed El-Arian. That's 11 p.m. Eastern from 11 a.m. in Hong Kong. Too many time zones. That's it for Bloomberg Technology. Tomorrow, we'll be joined by Alibaba Group President Mike Evans and Udacity founder Sebastian Thrun. Remember, all episodes of Bloomberg Tech now streaming live on Twitter. Check us out at Bloomberg Tech TV, weekdays 6 p.m. in New York, 3 p.m. in San Francisco.
Stocks rose with oil's 15-month high, lifting energy producers. Equities posted their biggest back-to-back gain in a month.
Top-level indictments handed out at Lotte Group in Korea's biggest corruption investigation in years.
Trump and Clinton meet again in their third and final presidential debate. The latest polls put Clinton out in front.
And clouds are gathering over Mitsubishi with a wider loss and now foreseen on the back of that fuel efficiency scandal.
This is Daybreak Asia coming to you live from Bloomberg's U.S. and Asian headquarters. I'm Ramy Inocencio in New York, where it's just past 7 p.m.
And it's just gone 7 a.m. here in Hong Kong. I'm Sherry Yan. Ramy, we've seen Asian markets just gaining the last couple of days, just being helped by that dollar that's now about to see its worst week in almost 2 months. So we're now seeing some momentum gaining in Asian markets. Let's see how they do today. Right now at the market open in New Zealand, though, we're seeing some losses there after a gain yesterday. The Kiwi dollar, though, has been pretty strong all week. Is now trading at 72.37 U.S. cents. Australia also gained for 2 days. We're now seeing it open unchanged at the moment, 54.38. But the Australian dollar strengthening throughout the week. I think 6 sessions of consecutive strength, 77.22 U.S. cents. Now, futures in Chicago unchanged at the moment, 17.10 right now. And the Nikkei, though, a gain for the last 4 sessions, up 0.2%. But be careful today. Of course, we have lots of market-moving news, especially what's going on in the U.S. with the third and last presidential debate. Ramy.
Yeah, that's right. We're looking forward to that in just the next few hours. Definitely going to see some fireworks today on that. But earlier today, we did get some positivity on the markets with the Fed Beige Book coming out with a little bit of a positive outlook for the U.S. economy. Oil was also on the boil to the upside. For more on that, let's go to Oliver Rennick, who's here on set with me, looking at the stock surge because of oil as well as energy stocks.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit of help we're starting to see. As oil kind of gets to that $50 mark and continues to move, around that area. I think there's not only sort of this idea of stability where, things aren't cascading down like they were last year. You see a little bit of strength. That, of course, bleeds through to the energy sector with the caveat that, of course, it doesn't contribute as much to the market anymore because it's been whittled down by earnings. But that did help, of course. We have the commodity in the entire spectrum helping there. And again, you've got 2 days of gains here. So you got the S&P, Dow Jones, both up about 20 bips on the day. NASDAQ Tech has been a little bit weaker, but you had some decent, not just across the commodity spectrum. You also had earnings here and there. You also had the Beige Book, so you've kind of got this idea that the economic data is going to be there where it's strong enough but not too strong to where we can still kind of have this, the Fed has this conversation about inflation, what's going to happen. It doesn't seem like we're going to hike and then keep hiking, which I think is pretty important to the equity market. So that's, I really think, a big part of it as we go to December. As long as there's no indication that we're going to be on this, a steep path for rates, then things probably, are going to be okay.
Oliver, you mentioned earnings right there. We're in the longest profit recession since the financial crisis. What are we seeing so far?
Well, we're seeing that we might be able to finally lose that title, but no promises yet because we still got to get through a lot more companies. We're not even a third of the way through here on the S&P 500. And basically what you're looking at is earnings that are beating expectations. We had some of those today, had some poor ones as well, but ultimately I think the financial aspect of the market is actually pretty good when you look at the financial companies. You've seen some reported numbers there. BB&T did well last week. We saw earlier in the week, rather, we saw Morgan Stanley, Goldman, all these companies that are sort of assuaging investor concerns. When you think about who's trading, who's buying on Wall Street, I mean, they like to see banks and they like to see financials in a little bit better condition than they were. So that's helping out a lot. A little bit of weakness today in eBay, which lost shares down about 8% on the day. But ultimately, it's looking like we're going to cross and that barrier and kind of jump the hurdle into positive territory if we continue at the rate of beats that we've been getting. We always beat with earnings, and now it's hopefully going to be enough to where we can actually close that earnings recession and move on and get some lower valuations in stocks.
Yeah, especially for financials. I mean, we've seen them lack some leadership there. We'll see if these earnings help. Oliver, great to talk to you. Thank you so much. Now let's get the first world news with Nina Melendez in New York. Nina.
Thank you, Sherry. Wells Fargo is being investigated on whether its employees committed identity theft by creating millions of fraudulent accounts. California's Attorney General issued a search warrant earlier this month seeking the names of bankers who opened unauthorized accounts. Wells Fargo says it's cooperating. We're told prosecutors in New York and San Francisco have also opened similar criminal investigations. Yahoo is demanding more transparency from the U.S. government. Reports are alleging that the U.S. built software to scan customers' emails for intelligence agencies. Yahoo wrote to National Security Director James Clapper asking for public clarification on national security orders to internet companies. Yahoo says the recent reports on its mail scanning activities are misleading. And Qatar may invest in the $100 billion tech fund formed by SoftBank and Saudi Arabia. Sources say SoftBank chairman Masayoshi Son discussed the idea during a recent visit to Doha. Now, Qatar's sovereign fund is said to be looking at investing billions to help diversify its oil-based economy. SoftBank and the Saudi fund need to attract around $30 billion more to hit their target. And Saudi Arabia is also trying to diversify its energy-dependent economy. The kingdom raised $17.5 billion in the biggest ever bond sale by an emerging market nation. We're told it sold 5, 10, and 30-year securities, yielding several basis points more than similar U.S. treasuries. It's Saudi's first entry into the bond market. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,600 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nina Melendez. This is Bloomberg. Sherry?
Nina, thank you. The sprawling Korean Lotte Group is back in the headlines with its founding family indicted for embezzlement, tax evasion, and breach of trust. It's the latest act in one of Korea's biggest corruption investigations, but investors may now be seeing light at the end of the tunnel. Let's bring in our Seoul Bureau Chief Peter Pei. Peter, so first of all, how serious are these charges?
Well, for the family, it's a blow. It's going to be a huge setback for them. It's very unusual for these type of indictments to be levied against entire family. It's usually, chairman of a company or a top-ranking official. This is all 5 family members that are basically at the top of this conglomerate. The scope of the indictments are significant. They range from tax evasion amounting to nearly $80 million, as well as embezzlement charges totaling up to $160 million.
Peter, so there's a bit of optimism, though, that Lotte can now turn its attention to some sweeping reforms. What kind of impact will the indictments have on Lotte companies?
Well, the analysts we spoke to last night feel that the Lotte companies themselves may have dodged a bullet here. Remember, the attempt to arrest the chairman on these charges failed. The court rejected it, saying there was not enough evidence to warrant an arrest. So now they're facing a trial. And the analysts that looked at the charges feel that if they are convicted, that they may just face fines, which means that the companies will continue to have that leadership and will basically be able to reorganize and continue on. And obviously, yesterday, Lotte even said that they may revive their hotel IPO, a hotel unit IPO, which they pulled when all this scandal broke. At that time, they were looking at a $4.5 billion IPO.
Peter, this does pave the way for reform, potentially out as early as next week. Very quickly, how do analysts see this playing out?
Well, I think we're going to see how the market's going to react in about an hour. And the analysts, as we spoke to, again, said that I think there's going to be a surge in those Lotte-affiliated stocks, mainly because they feel they've dodged a bullet, that there will now be reforms, particularly increasing transparency, changing the governance, more transparency. They're going to probably restructure the way the cross-holdings are done. So for the market, it looks like things are now back to where it should be.
All right. Bloomberg Seoul Bureau Chief Peter Pei, thanks very much. Meantime, back here in the U.S., Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump face their third and final presidential debate in the next couple of hours. It'll be Trump's last chance to resurrect his campaign as polls show Clinton has a 9-point lead. Bloomberg Politics' Margaret Talev is at the University of Nevada in Las Vegas. Now, Margaret, let's start with that Bloomberg poll here.
Yes, we're talking about a 9-point lead nationally now. And so the question really for Donald Trump is, this is his last chance if it's not too late. There are two groups that are most important to that gap that we now see, that 9-point lead by Clinton, that this poll has found. One is white male voters and the other is non-college educated voters. These are the two groups that it is absolutely crucial that Donald Trump be able to win back in this final debate if he's going to have a chance to turn things around in the final 20 days of this race.
Right, many say it's do or die. How is the format of this debate different?
So this debate, it's an hour and a half, and it's going to be divided into 6 sections. Each of those sections is going to cover sort of different areas, but there's two that I would watch. One is the economy, which is where Hillary Clinton and her campaign really wants to try to put Donald Trump on the spot about actual granular details of his plans and kind of comparing his own business record with what he's saying he wants to do for people. The other is a category called fitness to be president, where I would expect each of the nominees to attack the other and question the rationale for their fitness. So this is what happens actually once the program begins. It's these sections and these categories.
Margaret, in the last debate we had Trump just have that surprise press conference. What are we expecting in the next few hours leading up to the debate?
Right, Sherry, that's exactly the question, which is that we know what these questions are once the debate begins, but there's 2 hours until that debate begins. One thing the Clinton campaign will be looking for is whether there are any sort of other stunts or maneuvers meant to try to put her on the spot outside of the programming of the debate. We have seen reporting from Breitbart, which of course has ties to the Trump organization, about a new sort of accuser of Bill Clinton's from the 1980s, a former TV journalist coming forward to say that there was unwanted touching. Again, that's the former president, that's the husband of Hillary Clinton, not Hillary Clinton herself. But if there's more to come in the next 2 hours, the question is, I guess the question is whether there is more to come before the programming actually begins. That would be used to try to put Hillary Clinton on the spot by the Trump campaign.
Yeah, Margaret, some people asking if we'll see a mild, wild, or somewhere in between Trump. Margaret Talev, thank you so much for joining us. Now, our live coverage of the final U.S. presidential debate kicks off at 8:30 a.m. Hong Kong time. That's 8:30 p.m. in New York. We're also streaming live on Twitter. And still ahead, the businesses on a mission to fight global poverty through technology. We're live to the Barclays Asia Forum in Singapore a little later.
Plus, our next guest says emerging market equities are among the big winners this year. We'll be joined by Wells Capital Management's Kirk Hartman. This is Bloomberg. We're counting down to Asia's first major market opens this morning. Trading in Sydney already underway, up about 0.25%. You're watching Daybreak Asia. I'm Ramy Inocencio, New York.
And I'm Showdown in Hong Kong. A quick check of the latest business flash headlines. Dell CEO says the company plans to keep investing and making acquisitions just weeks after completing a merger with the EMC. Michael Dell told Bloomberg that there is enormous opportunity in the tech industry, worth an estimated $3 trillion. He also said Dell is looking at young companies a long way down the line.
We see plenty of opportunity organically to consolidate. Right. We're going to continue to make acquisitions, and alliances and partnerships are also important. We also have our ventures program, where we're investing in hundreds of the companies that are 24, 36, 48 months out in terms of the future.
Meantime, one of the world's largest food traders, Olam International, is said to be expanding its presence in Brazil. Sources tell us the Singapore-based company has started trading grains in the country after hiring from Cargill and relocating one of its own traders from London to Sao Paulo to focus on white sugar. Olam first entered Brazil in 2002, handling coffee, cotton, and spices.
Sources tell us China's State Grid is seeking to borrow about $9 billion to help fund a larger investment in Brazil's CPFL Energia. The world's largest utility already bought $1.85 billion stake in the Brazilian power distributor last month. Chinese companies are seeking to grow in Brazil at a time when local businesses are struggling with the worst recession in a century.
All right, the Fed's latest beige book says the U.S. economy has maintained moderate but steady growth since late August, with an outlook it describes as, quote, mostly positive. That report finds the labor market remains tight with modest employment as well as wage growth. And that has yet to lift inflation to the bank's 2% target. Traders see just a 17% chance of an interest rate hike at next month's Fed meeting. Off of that, let's bring in Kirk Hartman, President and CEO at Wells Capital Management. Kirk, I want to get your initial reaction to what the beige book came out. Overly positive. Any game changers for you here?
No, I don't think so. I think moderate growth is the right way to characterize the U.S. economy. I expect GDP between 1.5% to 2%. I think what's interesting is that the U.S. interest rate yield curve has flattened, meaning short-term interest rates have risen, while as the long end has remained flat. And the 5-year forward for U.S. interest rate is really very benign. So I think we're in a moderate growth environment with low inflation. And what's interesting in that environment as well is we've got a strong dollar.
Yeah, this GDP forecast of 1.5% to 2% or so dovetails with what ended the third quarter. Hop into my Bloomberg terminal, and I want to show our viewers here #BTV 4423. And I bring this up because if you look earlier on in the quarter, we had a 3.8% forecast for growth. We're now at 1.9, half of that. But the beige book was positive. Jobs, wages, housing. Can both of these views really exist in the same reality?
Sure they can. I think it's a balance, between the beginning of the year and the end of the year. You got to remember that we came off quite a bottom at the end of last year. Oil prices were really low. Oil companies were having a lot of trouble. And, there were a lot of areas that were struggling. So now we've seen quite a rebound in oil. And, I would expect that the second half would probably, again, come in at like 1.5%, 2%, which is probably the average for the year.
All right, and out of that beige book, they're talking about the job market being pretty tight. But with that said, Fed Chair Janet Yellen said that there was some slack, which was a reason for not hiking rates in September. From your perspective, which side is it?
Well, I think wage pressures are picking up, and my expectation is the Fed will hike 25 basis points in December. Obviously, that's not an earth-shattering number, but I think clearly wage pressures are tighter, and we've got unemployment around the 5% level. So I think it's reasonable to expect some rate increase later in the year.
Kirk, I want to turn to the markets because we're seeing a very different view from the currency world and from the equity world. We're seeing the equities just low volatility, the VIX sitting at a 20% below historical averages. But the currency market has been pretty unstable. Usually when this happens, we see a sell-off in equities. Should we be expecting that?
I don't think we should. I think that larger caps will struggle a bit with the stronger dollar because of exports. What's been very interesting is the big sectors this year have been emerging markets up 15%, small cap value stocks up 15%, and high yield up 15%. So those are pretty good numbers considering where we are. So I expect that certain sectors will do well and other ones that will be hurt by the stronger dollar. But stick with the small caps.
Yeah, stronger dollar, but still the dollar now heading for its worst week in almost 2 months. How do you play that when you're seeing Asian currencies now gaining on the back of China's GDP data?
Well, I think that they're going to gain a bit, but if you look at the currencies around the world versus the dollar, they've all weakened. And so obviously that helps emerging market exports, which I think is one of the reasons why you see the emerging market economies doing better. But I think the strong dollar is going to persist, especially if the Fed tightens in December.
So what's your portfolio allocation advice? Do you go into U.S. equities where you see low volatility, or do you go into EMs where you see higher yields?
I think you balance the two. I think you want a diversified low vol portfolio, probably factor-based, probably tilting towards value or small caps. In terms of the higher, octane, higher alpha sectors, I would recommend an allocation to higher quality dividend yield emerging markets. I would stick to the broad base small caps, which I think actually you've got some more area to run in terms of PEs. And I stay to the higher quality high yield. A lot of the triple C's and double B's have had a heck of a run, but I would stick to the higher quality high yield. So I would balance low volatility diversification with some higher octane sector allocations.
Kirk, just quickly, it seems that economic indicators to spot troubles ahead, such as the one you mentioned, the yield curve flattening, they don't seem to be working that much anymore given this artificial market. So what are you looking at?
Well, I think you're right. I think that the central banks have, created a lot of misinformation in the market. So, as you can tell, I'm much more constructive on the U.S. I'm worried about Europe. I think Europe is going to continue to have volatility as a result of Brexit. You've got the Italian, political elections, later in December. And, I think that in areas like that, you'll continue to see volatility. And, as you mentioned earlier in the program, you've also got a U.S. election. I think the market expects that Clinton will probably win, meaning that there's a lot more knowledge as to what the policies will be. On the other hand, there will certainly, depending on the next couple weeks, if there's a lot more speculation that there could be a Trump upset, I think there'd be concerns about volatility and trade and those kind of things.
Right. Looking forward to that presidential debate in a couple of hours. Kirk, thank you so much. Kirk Hartman, President and CIO at Wells Capital Management. Now, the 10th Barclays Asia Forum is being held today in Singapore, and we have some big exclusive interviews for you. Allianz Chief Economic Advisor and Bloomberg View columnist Mohamed El-Arian will be speaking to us at 11:10 a.m. local time. That's 10 past 11 Eastern. Then we'll hear from Barclays CEO Jes Staley on the outlook for the bank and life after Brexit.
Up next, though, eBay is expecting a tough holiday shopping season this year amid growing competition from its rivals. Details next. This is Bloomberg. You're watching Daybreak Asia. I'm Ramy Inocencio in New York.
And I'm Sherry Yan in Hong Kong. eBay is taking a tumble in extended trading. It fell as much as 8.9% at one point. It's down 7.9% after its sales forecast missed estimates. Sue Keenan is here to break down their results. Sue, give us the highlights.
Well, coming out right before the holiday quarter and saying their projected revenue and profit is maybe going to miss, really not the message that Wall Street wanted to hear. Momentum they generated early in the season may not carry into the holiday season, dominated by e-commerce leader Amazon.com. That was the essence of the message. Slammed the stock down some 8.9% in extended trading. Now, here are the numbers they gave us. The forecast revenue ranging from $2.36 to $2.41 billion. Analysts expected the high end of that, 2.4. Adjusted profit, 52 cents to 54 cents, they say. Again, analysts were at the high end with 54. The bright spot here, revenue from StubHub in the third quarter up 32% to $263 million. Another bright spot for the third quarter, they were up some 5.6%, $2.2 billion revenue ahead of estimates. It's the third straight quarter they've been able to increase sales, but the market really focusing on what's ahead with the holiday.
Sue, very quickly, tell us about the holiday face-off between eBay and Amazon, too.
Well, it really is about Amazon, which has become the big, scary giant in the mix. eBay really has been trying to reinvent itself ever since the split with PayPal, and they've talked about broadening their product mix, but eBay is up against Amazon this fall.
All right, Sue Keenan, thanks very much. Up next, Mitsubishi Motors forecasts a first annual loss in 8 years. That next. This is Bloomberg.
Another cloudy and rainy day here in Hong Kong, where it's just gone 7:30 a.m. Thursday. We're now just half an hour away from Asia's first major market opens.
And it's 7:30 p.m. Wednesday here in New York, where markets closed up about 0.2%. I'm Ramy Inocencio in New York.
And I'm Sherry Yan in Hong Kong. You're watching Daybreak Asia. Let's now get the first word news with Nina Melendez in New York. Nina.
Thank you, Sherry. U.S. stocks posted their biggest back-to-back advance in a month on the heels of better-than-expected corporate earnings and a surge in energy producers. West Texas crude jumped to a 15-month high on data showing a surprise decline in U.S. inventories. This comes after Saudi Arabia signaled success for planned OPEC output cuts. That spurred a boost for big oil companies, including ExxonMobil and Shell. The chairman of Korea's Lotte Group has been indicted for embezzlement and breach of fiduciary duty. Prosecutors say Shin Dong-bin's actions cost Lotte more than $150 million. They also indicted his older brother and his father, who is the group's founder, for financial crimes. Shin is the most prominent business figure to face trial since SK Group's chairman Chae Tae-won was jailed for embezzlement in 2013. And the presidential candidates are preparing for their third and final debate as the Bloomberg poll gives Hillary Clinton a 9-point national lead over Donald Trump. The survey was taken after Trump's lewd comments about women and several allegations of sexual assaults. Invited to the debate is President Obama's estranged half-brother and the mother of an American killed in the 2013 Benghazi consulate attacks. Our live coverage begins in an hour from now. And Typhoon Haima has hit the north